She held my phone like it was a toy and said, "Mom says it's fake." The dining room froze for a moment, but only for me. My niece grinned, that little smirk that somehow carried all the confidence of a seasoned critic. Her fingers barely touched my iPhone 17 Pro, and already it felt lighter than air, like something cheap, unworthy. Around us, the laughter started, soft at first, then swelling, filling the room, pushing me back into a corner of invisible shame. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking like he just won something. "That's what she's for, right?" he said, his voice sharp, smug. The words weren't about the phone. They were about me, my silence, my endless willingness to cushion their world. The smell of roast and lemon mingled with the scrape of forks against plates. It all blurred, and in that blur, humiliation wore the mask of family love. I am Selene Marlo. I'm 31. For years, I've been the invisible engine of my family's comfort, their unspoken ATM, the one who swallowed quiet resentment for their laughter. Today, that all felt heavier than ever. My niece tilted the phone, examining it with the curiosity only a child could wield like a weapon. "Feels fake," she said, mimicking the tone she had learned from her mother, sharp, cutting, confident. And then she bent it. The snap of glass, the metallic groan of something expensive giving way under careless hands. It was a sound that ripped through me, lodged itself in my chest, and lingered. Laughter erupted again, louder this time, like a wave crashing over me. My calmness remained unnoticed, like an unlit candle in a room full of fire. I picked up the pieces. Two jagged halves reflected the chandelier's light like broken promises. My fingers didn't shake. That detail went unseen. "Enjoy lunch," I said quietly, sliding the ruined phone into my bag, as if tucking away a fallen body. No one heard the edge in my voice. They were too busy, too distracted, too comfortable. Later that night, the house was silent. My desk lamp threw long shadows across a desk covered in bills, tuition, utilities, the constant invisible work of someone else's comfort. I opened my laptop, navigated to a familiar section. Tuition, niece. One click, $900 vanished. Permanent. No one knew. No one saw. Phone snap, laughter fades. But silence is sharper than any scream. And that night, silence was mine. The next morning, the first call came. My brother. His voice was tight, urgent. "Selene, the school says the payment didn't go through. Some kind of mistake." "Mistake?" I repeated, calm, deliberate. "No mistake." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What are you talking about? That's her future." I thought of the little girl at the table the day before, her fingers bending my phone, her laughter echoing in the room like a bell of entitlement. "Her future," I said smoothly, "is in her parents' hands now, not mine." The slam of the receiver rattled through me like a drumbeat, line crossed. They never thought I had the courage to draw it. By Sunday evening, the storm arrived at my doorstep. My sister-in-law, perfume cutting through the air before her words, barged in. "You're sick," she spat, earrings swinging. "It's just a child. You're ruining her life over a phone." I stood in the doorway, calm, arms folded. "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just giving her what you all taught her. Actions have consequences." Her laugh was brittle. "We'll find another way. You think you're the only one with money?" Beneath the defiance, I saw fear. They knew the truth, though they'd never admit it. For years, I had been the quiet engine of their display. Private schools, vacations, designer clothes. My generosity had been invisible, assumed, unthanked. "You've mistaken me for a safety net," I said softly. That net just snapped. She left with the slammed door, the frame rattling in its corner. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't in decades. Power reclaimed. By Wednesday, the ripples became waves. The school sent an official letter. tuition terminated, enrollment suspended. My niece's name, once guaranteed on the roster, vanished. The envelope was a verdict. The next Sunday, they called it a family lunch again. I knew better. The air was different this time. Heavy, quiet. Eyes followed me as I set my purse down. My brother's opening salvo. Selene, do you have any idea what you've done? She'll lose her spot permanently. I met his glare with silence. Silence carries more weight than anger, more precision than any words. His wife leaned forward, venom masked as sugar. You've humiliated us in front of the school board. Do you want your niece treated like trash now? I almost laughed. Funny, I said softly. You didn't mind when she treated me like trash at this very table. The room froze. They weren't used to my voice cutting like glass. My mother's voice broke through, gentle but weary. Sweetheart, she's just a child. We overreacted. Be the bigger person, reinstate the payments, and move on. I raised my gaze slowly, deliberately. No. One word. That word sliced through the room like a knife. My niece, arms crossed at the table, muttered under her breath, "It's just school. Mom says we'll find another." Even now, entitlement dripped from her voice, but this time it wouldn't go unchecked. The silence that followed pressed in on the room. It was a silence that unsettles, shifts, makes people uncomfortable. I left before dessert. The letter arrived 3 days later. Final. Enrollment terminated. No exceptions. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like their wallet. I felt sharp, steady, silent justice in motion. She's learning gravity the hard way. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe. By the time Wednesday evening rolled around, the household that had once treated me like a disposable safety net was in quiet disarray. The private academy had confirmed the tuition termination. My niece's name was absent from the roster, a stark reminder that actions, no matter how small they seemed to them, had consequences. I could almost hear the panic in my brother's mind, the calculated armor of his carefully curated life beginning to crack. The whispers of neighbors, the quiet judgments of friends, the subtle questioning at work, they all arrived uninvited, like frost creeping under a door. I hadn't done anything violent. I hadn't screamed. I had merely withdrawn my compliance. But the effect? Catastrophic. That Sunday, the family gathered again, this time without the usual pageantry. There was no roast, no laughter, no sparkling wine, just an odd, suffocating hush. My niece sat curled in the corner, eyes hollow, the pedestal stripped from beneath her small frame. My sister-in-law avoided my gaze, fingers twisting napkins into shreds, as if the act could undo reality. My brother's voice, when it came, was soft, almost defeated. You won, he said simply. I set my fork down deliberately. Not with triumph, but with quiet resolve. This was never about winning. It was about ending the cycle. For decades, I had given silently. For decades, they had taken without care. And now, finally, my niece would learn a lesson no lecture could teach her. Life doesn't hand you comfort without responsibility. Later that night, in the quiet of my home, I arranged the two broken halves of my phone in a box. It wasn't a wound, nor a trophy. It was a monument, a reminder that some fractures don't need repair. They need recognition. I whispered to the dark, they will never use me as a safety net again. And for the first time in decades, my walls didn't feel like a prison. They felt like protection. The following Monday brought a storm I had anticipated. My niece stood before the public school mirror, uniform plain, shoes stitched and instead of embossed, backpack modest and practical. Gone were the logos and curated elegance she had flaunted in the private academy halls. Her tears weren't about education. They were about status, about losing the life handed to her without effort. She hesitated at the school entrance, whispers trailing behind her like smoke. "Everyone will laugh," she said to herself. Her mother's words, "Mom, fix this," echoed faintly in her mind, but there was no fixing left. By lunch, her phone buzzed endlessly with messages from old classmates like, "What happened? Did your family go broke?" Though I wasn't there to witness it, I could picture her slump, the cracks forming in her arrogance. Back at the dinner table that week, my brother's jaw was locked tight, his pride shredded into fragments. My sister-in-law's eyes were red-rimmed, her careful composure finally gone. "You've made your point," she said thinly. "She's suffering. She doesn't deserve this." I set down my fork, eyes meeting hers without flinching. "Neither did I replied. 4 years of feeding their comfort with my silence, of swallowing humiliation so they could laugh, those days were over. My silence had turned into a blade, and I wielded it with precision. Later, in the quiet of my home, I pictured her lying in bed, whispers of mockery still ringing in her ears. Part of me felt a faint echo of pity, but pity is dangerous. Pity maintains chains. I whispered into the darkness, "Let her learn. Let them all learn." And for the first time in decades, my walls didn't feel like a prison. They felt like protection. The call started again. Not just my brother, but layered. A concerned aunt, a curious cousin, a worried mother. Each conversation carried the same underlying script: guilt. Guilt for failing to provide, for overreaching, for depending too long on someone who gave silently. My aunt sighed over the phone. "Families fight, but you don't let children pay the price." I responded, calm, unwavering. "That's exactly the problem. Everything was handed. Nothing was owned." Then came the ambush. An invitation to my mother's house, tea, she claimed. I arrived to find the living room full. My brother, sister-in-law, my niece perched on the couch, eyes swollen from crying. My mother sat upright, rosary clutched like a shield. "This has to stop," my brother snapped. "Selene, we need you." I looked at him, icy calm. Need me or need my money? His wife leaned forward, voice trembling, rehearsed sincerity. "We're sorry. She's sorry, right?" My niece muttered, "Sorry," but it sounded hollow, empty, a balloon without air. "You don't understand," I said quietly. "Apologies mean nothing if entitlement still lives under your skin. This isn't about a phone anymore. It's about respect, and you've shown me how little of it you carry." My mother's voice cracked. "Selene, please, I raised you better than this. Don't let pride destroy us." I bent down and kissed my niece's forehead gently, whispering, "You raised me to sacrifice, not to be sacrificed." Then I turned to the rest. "You taught her actions have no weight. Now she's learning gravity the hard way." The room held its breath. They thought I would fold. They thought guilt, tears, and rehearsed sorrow would bring me back into their orbit. They didn't understand. Once a chain breaks, it doesn't return to steel. It becomes dust. And I was already free. Within a week, the whispers turned into stories. The private academy's social circle buzzed. Parents questioned. Colleagues asked. The carefully curated social media posts of my sister-in-law went quiet. Reputation, their oxygen, was suddenly missing. I hadn't lifted a finger. I hadn't shouted. I had simply removed my support. Then came the defining moment. One evening, I left the grocery store to find my brother waiting by my car. Tie loose, face hollow, eyes smaller than I had ever seen. "Selene," he said roughly, "please, we were wrong about everything. Just don't let her suffer like this." I paused, studying the man who laughed while his daughter snapped my phone in half, who treated me like disposable credit. "You feel powerless, finally," I murmured. "Good. That's what you made me feel for years." He winced, but didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his pocket and produced a folded check. Half a month's tuition, a white flag fluttering in trembling hands. I looked at him, then back to my car. "You don't understand. This isn't about money," I said softly. "It never was. It's about respect, about reclaiming my life from your entitlement." I drove away, leaving him under the harsh streetlight, check dangling uselessly. Revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't doors slammed or words shouted. It was quiet, deliberate, inevitable, like winter creeping over autumn. Within a week, the private academy's new admission list arrived. My niece's name was gone. Erased like chalk on wet pavement. No waiting list, no exceptions. The door was closed. Through my mother, I heard, "She's devastated. She cries herself to sleep. Other kids call her discount queen." I closed my eyes, inhaled. I felt no joy, no malice. I felt balance. The scales, for once, aligned. That Sunday, the family gathered again. Cheap takeout, no laughter, no display. My niece curled in the corner, pride stripped. My sister-in-law wouldn't look at me, hands twisting napkins into shreds. My brother's voice, quiet, almost broken. "You won." I set my fork down. It was never about winning. It was about ending the cycle. Later alone, I boxed the broken phone halves, not as a wound, not as a trophy, but as a monument. A reminder. Fractures sometimes don't need fixing. They need remembering. As I turned off the light that night, I whispered to the darkness, "They'll never use me as their safety net again." And for the first time, my house, my life, my silence, it was entirely, undeniably mine. The quiet was mine. The freedom was mine. And for the first time, family didn't feel like chains. It felt like choice.